Hi, I'm Phil Stewart, Head of Real Time at Blue Zoo Animation Studios. We're an animation studio that's mainly based in London, although we do have staff all around the world now. We have around 420 staff members. Most of those work in our long form production department. So that's making preschool TV shows, longer TV shows for children's networks. And for that, we've won a number of BAFTAs, Annies, and Emmys. We also have a short form department who work on commercials and adverts and things like that. You can see a few pieces of work that we've made on the screen now. And today I'm going to talk about real-time technologies, specifically Unreal Engine, and how and why we're integrating that into our pipeline. So what is Unreal Engine? Well, it's a computer game engine. It's created and distributed for free by Epic Games and has been used to make such games as Fortnite, PUBG, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. What game engines do really well is calculate, generate, and output frames to a screen very fast, typically over 60 frames per second. And as modern hardware advances, game engines like Unreal are also bringing more and more quality to those frames. The biggest advance in recent years is that due to hardware and software improvements, game engines are now able to use ray tracing, the lighting technique that realistically calculates how light bounces around a scene in order to make those frames more realistic and beautiful. Ray tracing is something that has been uniquely necessary for decades for the kind of high quality animation that studios like Blue Zoo produce, but until a few years ago, it wasn't possible in real time. Due to these advances, we've been testing Unreal Engine for a while now and have several productions under our belt using it as the primary lighting and rendering software, and are now looking to start using it in more of our work. But why would we do that? Adding major new software into a workflow always comes with risks and problems. You have to develop a new pipeline, you have to teach your artists how to use it and establish new workflows, and that can be a very expensive process. So what benefits are there that could possibly outweigh these risks? Well, for us, one of the most computationally expensive parts of creating animation is the lighting and rendering. On our TV shows, we typically render using Redshift, which is a GPU renderer and generally one of the faster renderers available to us for producing the kind of quality work that we need. On our show, The Adventures of Paddington, a character pass rendered with Redshift can take any time from 2 to 15 minutes per frame. Environments average between 4 to 15 minutes per frame, and effects can be anywhere from 30 seconds to 30 minutes per frame. So all in all, this works out to be between 10 and 40 minutes of rendering per composited frame of animation. Using Unreal Engine on our short film Ada, we were averaging 24 frames per second of finished animation. On Christmas with the Moonies, which was a much more complex looking film, we were getting around about 12 frames per minute. So that's a huge time saving with those. Also, in Unreal, we were able to work with final image. So what we see in the viewport is what we're actually putting into the edit. Unreal has the ability to do lots of post-processing in the viewport, things like lens effects, bokeh, color grading, and vignette. And so you can get that final image out without a discrete compositing step. Everything gets taken care of at lighting. So reducing the number of required steps and speeding up our render times are huge benefits and affect our studio in two key ways: our artists' time and our environmental footprint. I'll start with the environmental side of things. Lower render times means lower electricity consumption per shot and less wear and tear on our hardware. One of the most important things Blue Zoo is working on at the moment is reducing our environmental footprint. We recently achieved B Corp status, but we want to do more where we can. If we can reduce our render times by any amount, let alone 40 times, it's something we really have to explore. And as for artist time, if an artist can see what their final image looks like in the viewport and can watch animation playing back in real time rather than waiting hours for a rendered shot to come back, they gain the ability to be more creative and more experimental with their shots. If they can test different light positions, so to see what something looks like with more of a rim light or less fill light, they're going to be able to take their shots to the next level, which means our quality of work goes up. It also reduces the severity of mistakes to almost zero. If there's a shader missing or something like that, they can fix it immediately rather than realizing the next day and having to go back, reopen that shot, make the fix, and then resubmit that to the render farm, which takes their time and the render farm's time again. This creative freedom and lower risk environment adds up to make our artists' lives much more enjoyable and less stressful, which can only be a good thing. But what's the catch? You can't get something for nothing here. There has to be something given up for this speed increase. Well, at the moment, there are a few shortcomings with platforms like Unreal Engine, specifically memory usage, the way it works with hair, aliasing problems, and just in general, the lighting and the light physics. We've found that it can be quite easy with complex scenes in Unreal to ask too much of our hardware, causing crashes. It's quite easy to counteract this. The process you have to go through is optimizing your scenes and planning accordingly. However, this takes time and expertise and starts to eat into those benefits we were talking about and what we're seeing. We also struggle with hair and fur at the moment. Unreal is definitely getting better at this, and in the last few versions, we've seen huge steps forward and have been testing grooms with good results, but it is still a long way off full production software at the moment. And aliasing is an issue. Even with anti-aliasing turned up to 11, we still see jaggies with our finished footage, which is obviously not something we can have in our shows. To fix this, we render at double resolution, 4K for a 2K image, for example, and then scale the footage down, which removes all of these artifacts. But obviously, this isn't ideal, and it adds a lot of pressure to the hardware and adds time to the renders. And just plain lighting is another aspect to consider. If we want the same quality of renders we get from Redshift, we have to turn up the samples, increase the light radiuses, and things like that, which increases our render times. We found that we can get there, but we start to lose those benefits that we were getting in the first place. For instance, this Lego test was done in Unreal and looks great, but it was taking 8 minutes per frame, and the only graphics card in the office that could handle it at the time was the Titan RTX I had in my machine, and that was after a lot of optimization. So clearly there are still things to work through, and while hardware is improving rapidly, and we will get there, at the moment we're still not able to get all the benefits we need with none of the drawbacks. We've come to the realization that if we want to use Unreal for productions, we need to design those shows to work within the confines of Unreal and work to its strengths. Have non-furry characters, use simpler sets and more stylized aesthetics so you can really get away with cutting the corners where you need to. And if we work like this, we really can reap the benefits of real time without the drawbacks. But why only rendering? So far, I've only spoken about the rendering side of the pipeline, and this is probably the area we'll see the most improvements for our general productions. However, Unreal definitely has potential to speed up and improve other parts of our pipeline as well, for instance, animation. One of the biggest issues we face as an animation studio at the moment is that the demand for content has grown exponentially in the last few years. Social media sites like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube mean that the demand for quality content has increased, but the speed at which we can make that content has not accelerated at the same rate. So we decided to start developing our own puppeteering system, because while motion capture is great, it can lead to uncanny valley situations when you're using it to drive stylized characters, and you're also limited by what the actor can do. It's fine if you want someone to walk or jump, but if you need a squirrel to run up a tree, you can't motion capture that. However, you can puppeteer it. It also lets us push our animation further. As a studio, we are known for our stylized animation, big expressive movements and reactions. So we need to be able to do that, and a motion capture suit doesn't give you that ability nearly as well as puppeteering. We're developing our system inside of VR in Unreal Engine, and using specialized rigs and our own proprietary technology, we can puppeteer characters in real time. And by recording each layer of animation as it's puppeteered, we can build up complex and character animation really quickly. A 30-second animation can be puppeteered in around 5 minutes and then rendered in 30 seconds. You can see here I'm animating a scene in virtual reality. I'm controlling the character that you see on the screen behind me, and this is a really quick process, and we're able to build up this animation, and it's already in Unreal Engine, so it can be dropped straight into a scene, to be lit and rendered really, really quickly. And here, this is an older test, but it's a good example of how we've been using physics. So using the dynamic systems which are built into Unreal, cloth simulation to simulate the arms and the dress here, so we can get a good idea of the kind of things a system like this is capable of. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that quick introduction into how we at BlueZoo are using Unreal Engine and real-time software, and maybe it will have given you some ideas as to how it can help you as well. Thanks.
Hi, my name is John Rennie, and I'm the Managing Director of Clothcat Animation, and we're an animation game studio based in Cardiff. For the last couple of years, we've been doing research and development into game engine rendering, so this video is to talk briefly about the work we've been doing and to give you an idea of the future potential opportunities from game engine rendering. For our most recent series, Shane the Chef, we used Maya and Redshift as our animation software and our renderer. Although we could have done all the work in Maya, the renderer in Maya is CPU based and therefore not as quick and efficient as other options. We decided to look at Redshift because it was a GPU accelerated renderer, the market leader at the time, and used NVIDIA cards to speed up the calculations normally used for producing graphics so that hopefully we could render frames quicker and more efficiently. During the project, we found that although it could, and it did, the expectation of the rendering was so much higher, and therefore we didn't actually save a huge amount of time. And we spent a lot of time trying to optimize the project for the GPU accelerated renderer, that meant actually we didn't make it as efficient as we wanted it to be. Therefore, at various times during the project, we looked at different ways of rendering, and towards the end, looked at Unreal as a potential option for rendering the series. As a studio, we've been using game engines for many years. We use Unity to do all our apps and games for various clients, but Unreal is a AAA game engine. It's used to do very big titles. Fortnite is the biggest example, and it's designed to render things much more efficiently and quicker, and also supported ray tracing in the most recent versions. This was a bit of a game changer for us because up to then game engines were designed to do things very efficiently and quickly, but also with a lot of corner cutting. They're meant to be able to do things in real time, and there's a reason why a real-time game engine can't always do the things that a normal renderer, whether it's Redshift or otherwise, can do. The calculation is much more intensive. However, with ray tracing available on cards, suddenly you're able to do the quality of image you would normally expect from a traditional renderer, suddenly on a game engine in real time. So we took Shane the Chef assets and environments from Maya and Redshift and put them into Unreal, and very quickly proved that we could do and use Unreal for doing an animation series with all the high quality and fidelity that we come to expect. There were differences, of course, there always will be. There's ways of optimizing for games that are different to the ways of optimizing for traditional animation. But we felt that game engines were a really useful way of perhaps streamlining the process, particularly for animators, so they could see the final image quicker in their workflow. So here you can see examples of the work we were doing, taking our Shane the Chef environments and putting them into Unreal. You can see that we can move around them in real time. We can find problems, we can find holes in things, we can see what the reflections are doing, we can see what the lighting is doing, we can make adaptations to the lighting in real time, and we can also see whether or not there's any intersections. All these little things that you can only really see towards the end of a process when you're rendering normal animation. We found on Shane the Chef there's a lot of inefficiencies because we'd be building an object but only really knowing whether it would work in a scene many weeks later once the animation and rendering had been done and all the lighting was complete. To us that was very inefficient. Normally we're used to a quicker turnaround than that. Game engines were presenting an opportunity for us to actually do a lot of work at the beginning to create objects and light things and see in real time what they look like before they ever got anywhere near an animator. That way the animation team were very confident that whatever they were animating on wasn't going to get redone, that there weren't going to be intersections, there weren't going to be collision issues that you'd normally expect when you're doing full animation. Part of our R&D was to look into also what the animation software should be. We decided to use Blender as part of our animation pipeline, mainly because it's open source, it's freely available, which makes it easy for people to learn and to gain skills, but also because you could connect it with Unreal and with our F-Track pipeline so that we can make things much more efficient for the animators. To this end, we've actually decided to use Unreal as the backbone of the pipeline. We're actually using it for layout. We're actually doing all the build and all the layout in Unreal, then exporting that to Blender so that you can animate on it, and then pushing that back to Unreal to update the Unreal scene every time an animator makes a change. That means that we're always looking at it in real time. We're always assessing whether or not it's working. We can make camera adjustments, we can make lighting adjustments without the animators really worrying about upsetting any part of the process. There are, of course, limitations of game engine renderers. They're designed to do things in real time, therefore they cut corners. So really, sometimes it's actually not as good to use a real-time renderer when you want to do something highly complex and detailed. Game engine renderers are not going to be really used for high-end feature films or TV series really, because they can't do the complex lighting and fluid simulations and all the things you want to have when you're doing high-end animation. However, game engines can be really useful for preschool and for animated series where you have a very high turnaround, you want to see things quickly, and also you don't want to be spending a lot of time waiting for your approvals to come through. For us, this could be a really good opportunity to produce high quality animation for a new audience. We've already started working on a new series using this pipeline. Sadly, I can't show you anything, but the Blender and Unreal pipeline has already made things much more efficient for our artists. They're able to view everything quickly and approve things with the producers, and the animators are able to see what they're working on in real time to check whether the lighting is correct. You know, we have characters walking through scenes with torches, we have fire, we have lots of different various effects going on. Normally you'd have to wait until the end of the process to see that. Now we're able to view it in real time and see whether or not everything's working correctly for the camera. I'm really pleased with the way this is working. There are many benefits to using this process, not least the environmental benefits, because you're using local machines to render rather than big servers and rendering nodes in air-conditioned rooms, but also for the well-being of crew. We're able to offer home working and distributed working, because actually you're not then a burden on the process, you're not being tied to some large central storage. Blender also allows us to access staff all around the world because Blender is open source, easy to learn, is available for everyone to use, and therefore hopefully we'll have remove a training bottleneck that we currently have in the industry. So there's still a lot of work to do on this pipeline. Unreal is still a game engine and has its few limitations, and is also about to release version 5. Blender is about to do a version 3, which will have hopefully a lot of new tools for animation. So this is an ongoing process for us, but we're really looking forward to presenting more work to you at a later date.